be heard.
Banditos.
See, now we're actually live.
Now we're actually
When
live.
I was accused of being live off the air 10 seconds ago, we weren't live.
You know, when we started our podcast show, whatever we call this thing,
Podcast, yep.
podcast,
Nailed it.
guess what? Our producer would say, I'm going to hit the button. Then when I say live, then you'll be live. And then at some point, they decided it's way too funny to watch us fumble around. We're not going to say live anymore. And we're just going to get you to talk because, look, we just don't sit here in silence. Should we start doing that? Just like look away from each other like we don't like each other?
We just need to have some loyalty here between the director.
None. There's
Zero.
absolutely none. It is producers against
So when do
hosts.
we start?
Loyalty among thieves.
I think we
for the
should start right
producers.
now. Pre-game
let's
show.
go.
Stars, Capitals. Let's get it. We are live. How about that? This is the DLLS Dallas Stars pregame show. As they get ready to play their second road game of the season, they face the Washington Capitals from the nation's capital tonight at Capital One Arena. I think I said capital enough?
Yes.
All
plenty.
right. Alongside Craig Ludwig, I'm Owen Newkirk. No Sam Nessler tonight. Sam, we wish you well. He is out day-to-day where they believe we termed it an upper body injury, but he should be back, maybe even by Saturday.
We can get through it. Nothing really happened today.
No, we have plenty of things to talk about. So let's get right to it. The big news of the day actually precedes tonight's game, and it's the fact that the Stars announced this morning that Jake Oettinger, their starting goalie, who will not be starting tonight, just signed a new contract extension, 8-year deal. He got what we like to call Jeremy Swayman money, $8.25 million AAV. That equates to a $66 million paycheck. He was already making $4 million on his bridge deal. This is a huge, huge pile of money. What do you think about this whole thing and the fact that Ottinger is now locked up for the next 9 years, counting this year, and 8 more?
It's great timing. I mean, when you talk about the Swayman, Allmark signed for the same kind of thing. There's a guy in New York that's waiting on a $12 million payday, whether he gets it or not. I think, again, Jim Nill wins this part again. I mean, not that Otter didn't, but I think Jim got out ahead of it, made sure that somebody doesn't sign for bigger money down the road. Otter obviously was very pleased with it. And again, we were just talking before the show that, you know, the $12 million.
It might have been on the show. We
It
don't
could
know
have
when
been
he
on
hit
the show. We
start.
don't know anymore. But I mean, there is the tax situation here in Texas, or not lack of, versus what, you know, another guy may get in New York or some other place. But the one thing that you let off that I like about this day, especially now that Jake is signed, is that he's not playing tonight. I love that. I hate it when somebody signs some kind of a deal and then they got to play that same night or the very next night, because it's almost it's like a lose-lose kind of thing. And I just think that now he can just take a deep breath. Casey goes in there tonight, and then he can be ready to play next game.
Well, let's talk about the distractions. It's a big buzzword to you.
Yeah.
This is the exact opposite of what the Bruins just went through with Jeremy Swayman 2 times over. Because last year, Swayman had arbitration as an RFA, and he elected to go to it, as is his right, and he had to experience what arbitration really is. Now, most people have an idea, but do you really? What they actually have to do is the player goes into the arbitration hearing, sits down, and he hears his arbiter basically give a pitch of why he deserves the number they're asking for. Then he has to sit there and hear the team's arbiter say all the bad things about him, why he doesn't deserve that money and why they want a lower one. And that is not easy on a human being, because these are highly tuned professional athletes, but they're also human beings. And to sit there and listen to somebody who you have been, not necessarily in their front office, but their hired arbiter, tell that you why you don't deserve a contract, that can't be easy for any athlete to take.
And it can get ugly. And you come out, or you go into the room thinking, you know, we're on the same page here. They like what I've been doing for 2-3 years, and I'm their guy. And the next thing you know, he's giving you all these reasons why you shouldn't make any money. So I just think, and again, it might be different with a player, and I don't mean that goalies aren't players, but they could be a little thin-skinned at sometimes. And it's one thing you want to do. You're not, as the general manager, let's not rattle him, because if he goes into a bad stretch and he gets sat out for a little bit, you can go, well, you told me I was awful in the arbitration meeting, that I wasn't worth this and I wasn't that good. So it's a tough situation. I've obviously never been involved in it, but I've heard some stories from some players where they will talk about guys that they thought were in their corners their whole careers that come in and really rip them.
I don't know if you've gotten a chance to watch any of the episodes of the new Amazon NHL series. It is fascinating. I think I'm 3 in of the 6. And one of them really focuses on Swayman. And he said, you talk about, they remember that. Swayman literally said, it was awful, and I will never forget that stuff.
Yeah, and I've heard the stories of it. And again, but they're doing their job, and the agents and everybody else are doing their job. This whole deal today, I just wonder if as soon as both of those goaltenders signed for the exact same amount, did Jake's agent call him and say, hey, this is where we can go, and I think that they'll go here. Or did that?
You're talking about did Ottinger's agent call Jim Nill and say this?
That's
this
what I mean.
is our benchmark.
Or did Jim call him and say, hey, you just want to do the Swayman deal?
I'm glad you said that. Now, I wasn't available to do our emergency pod today because I was up at the practice fields for FC Dallas getting ready for their TV game on Saturday night. So kind of juggling two things. You, Sean, and Sam handled it really well. We're not going to spend our whole pregame show talking about Jake Oettinger, but I think it really is important. A thing that you guys brought up was the chances of the value for Jake Oettinger going down are very low. Meaning, a couple of things. Jake's off to a good start. Got the shutout in his second game. He's won his first 3, and the Stars are off to a 4-0 start. That's only helping him. Swayman set the bar by the 8.25 AAV contract, but even more so, what if Jake outplays Jeremy Swayman this year? What if he goes into the playoffs and is better? It's a good problem to have. What if Jake makes the U.S. 4 Nations roster, which is very possible? We know Hellebuck is going to be in that mix. Thatcher Demko, we don't know where his health is. Swayman, Ottinger, those are the big 4 right there. We talked about it in our first week of doing the DLLS podcast. If any of those things happen, you go to the Swayman money and say, well, that is lower. We're going above that. Same with, what if Shesterkin signs for 11 or 12 and Jake has a better year? I think that's a really good reason for the Stars to get out in front of it, because there is a chance that Jake doesn't play well. There is a chance that you go, oh, I don't know if that's a lot of money. I think with the kind of talent he is, you bet on that.
When you talk about Shesterkin and all the things that have been out there about, where he wants to get with a number, it sounds like he just wants to be the highest paid player on that team, which I don't know how you do that. And again, maybe he is the most important piece, but I don't know how you can come out and say, you got to pay me more than, our next guy. So I don't like that part of it, but again, that's their thing. When it comes to all of this stuff, and there is that whole tax thing that comes into play with the money and his signing bonuses and all that kind of stuff. So I just think that Jim knew that it was a spot. Obviously, they were throwing numbers around for a while. This didn't happen today. And I think that Jim was worried about Shesterkin in a way, but the other numbers that were out there, he thought this would be a great spot. And we had the tax situation and all this other kind of stuff, and said, I'm going to throw this at him. And I just wonder if they said, good, that's exactly where we're at. But it hasn't been going on for 2 years.
Well, just think about this. This is a Cowboys reference. A couple years ago, the market rate for a starting quarterback was around $40 million, and they franchised Dak Prescott. I know it seems like an obscene amount of money, but that was the market rate at the time. And they decided to use the franchise tag on Dak. They could have signed him long-term, but there was this whole feeling of that people weren't convinced that he was the guy. Well, he just signed this year, this beginning of the season, for $60 million at the top of market value. So you could have saved $20 million a season on a starting quarterback in that regard. Now, the numbers are different, but I really, truly believe that Jake Oettinger could easily, he's going to be at 8.25 for 8 years after this season. He could easily be at 9+ if you waited and signed in the offseason.
Bottom line, it's a good deal for both sides.
Yes.
And there may be some other goalies out there going, I want that deal at some point. But I think at the end of the day, as much as you want to talk about it, both sides are happy. Jake gets it done pretty much before the season gets started. It's in the rearview mirror. Let's go forward.
Well, he's been a really bright spot to start this year already before the contract was announced today, because the Stars are 4-0, one of the few 4-0 teams in the NHL thus far, which is great. But if you actually dig into some of the team's numbers, boy, the other rankings around the NHL don't look as good for the Stars, except for goaltending and penalty kill, which kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, and this what I was talking about this morning. This morning I just started looking at some of the numbers that were Dallas's rankings where I was wondering because there's just something that, and again we're 4 games in. There was just something there that says, man, they haven't played that up to their standard, and new pieces and players gone, new players and things like that. Then you start looking and goals for, goals against, and all this stuff, and they're in the middle of the pack or they're a little bit below the middle of the pack. And there was only one gleaming one to me. And that was your goaltender or goaltenders, I should say, because Casey's part of that thing. And, the goals against and the penalty kill, which go hand in hand, are in the top 3 or 4 or 5, in all of those stats. The rest are way below middle of the pack. So it goes back to that. And again, if I'm upstairs and saying, man, this guy's been carrying this team right now, let's get this done. And then on the other side of the coin, we've heard the press conferences from Pete DeBoer. And I've talked about it. It's just that was kind of odd. And okay, didn't say much there. He kind of said something between the lines right there, and so I just think that Dallas has got obviously a couple more levels that they're going to go. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, it's a really good problem to be 4-0 and not being thrilled about the way your team's playing overall, big picture. That's the kind of lofty expectations this team has. Let's talk about a couple of things. And speaking of Pete DeBoer, Maverick Bourke made his season debut the other night, Tuesday, against the San Jose Sharks, and he was asked first question after the game, DeBoer, how the Stars rookie looked in his first game of the season.
Maverick.
Yeah, I thought he was fine for first game. I think he ended up he played 12 minutes. I thought good first game. He's been sitting for a while. He didn't get a lot of exhibition games, obviously, so tough to jump in and catch up, but I thought it was a good effort for first game for him.
That is interesting because you just said Pete's been kind of slow playing things in the press conferences and not saying a lot. Boy, he answered the question without saying a whole lot, which kind of says a lot, doesn't it?
Well, I think he was. He used the word think, which, and again, I said the other night after, I said, yeah, he was good to me. I don't really remember a lot. I mean, not good or bad, but I think that's where he came from. And then he's going through to kind of answer the question. He looks at his paper. 12 minutes. He didn't know how many minutes. So he wasn't overusing him, wasn't putting him out there. But again, coming off an injury, maybe he didn't want to do that. But Maverick is going to be a good player, and he's going to finally, at some point, he's going to get with the right 2 guys, right or wrong, whoever they're playing him with now. And we know what his upside is. So he's going to be a good player. But again, and coming off an injury, it wasn't not like he lit it up and he really stood out, but he didn't do anything where you went, oh, no, he can't play. So it's right down the middle of the fairway kind of.
Well, it's okay that he didn't stand out in his first game. Oscar Beck had the same problem. However, I think the ceiling for Maverick Bourke and the expectations are a lot higher than it is for Oscar Beck, all due respect to the young Swede. And with Bourke winning AHL MVP last year, being a dynamic duo with the Texas Stars with Logan Stankoven, it was not really comparable in the game against the Sharks, who was the more noticeable Stars forward. It was Logan Stankoven by a mile, but he's also played a ton more NHL games than Maverick Bourke has.
For me, he's been noticeable in 24 games that he played last year, and he's been noticeable in the 4 games that he played this year, even in the preseason. That's what I love about Stankoven, is that his preseason games look just like regular NHL games, because he only knows how to play one way. And Stankoven is going to be, I say motor all the time, but he's going to be that guy that's going to continue to drive lines. I've compared him to Yuri a little bit, Yuri Lettinen, where if there's a line that just is faltering a little bit and they need a little bounce here, a little jump there, some kind of, more energy, I would think that Pete's going to be the guy that's going to take him and throw him up on that line to try to get him going in a game or 2.
Well, you talked just a moment ago about goaltending and penalty kill being a real strong suit, maybe the strong suit for the Stars' first 4 games of the year. The power play has struggled, as Mason Marchman's goal at Nashville is the only successful man advantage through 4 games. And that means that right now they are 1 for 13, 7.7%. Only 4 games, but even Pete DeBoer isn't quite ready to make any full declarations of his power play just yet.
Is the power play harder to get ready for when starting a season, or the penalty kill?
I don't know. I mean, the power play's harder to get ready for the start of the season when, Jason Robertson doesn't play and Wyatt Johnson doesn't play. So, we'll talk about the power play. Give us 10 games, and then we can talk about the power play.
Was that PK?
So I thought that was really interesting because after the game in our post-game show Tuesday night, Sam portrayed it as Pete didn't want anything to do about the power play.
And when Pete kind of was trying to move that microphone around, I was thinking he wanted to rip it off and hit Sam over the head with it. Quit asking me about this stuff because, again, he's right. You don't practice it in preseason, and they've only had 4 games, and there's pieces in and out. And so he's basically saying we need time to get this together. There's another guy, another 2 guys on another team that we saw in game 1 in Nashville, and they're not on track either. And Marchessault and Stamkos, and their power play, and Stammers hit a couple posts and all this other kind of stuff. It takes time. And like they were talking about Stamkos and his one-timers up until the 3rd or 4th game that they played, and they said they're just off with a couple inches from where they're putting the puck so we can hit it because they're not used to putting it in the same spot. Right now, Joe Pavelski isn't on the power play.
Ding.
There we go.
That was a little delayed reaction from John.
It was sleeping over there. Because there's different pieces,
Yeah.
and not that because he would always start out with the same power play group last year, and then maybe you throw in a couple guys here and there, but it would change, and you can't run the same plays, the same setups all the time, and have the same results when there is one key piece missing. They'll find their other ways to get their goals, and Wyatt and Stankoven, they're all going to be a big part of this thing, but you do have to give them some time. And right now with the schedule that they've started with, and you have to give them some time off in between, you're watching video and things like that, but you would love to have 3, 4, 5 days where you can just consistently work 5 on 4, and I say 5 on 4, not 5 on 0. It's totally different. And then throw in your penalty killers and give them some resistance.
I always laugh when they do the 5-on-0 power play.
Don't they look so damn good out there?
They snap it around.
Oh
It's
my gosh.
I've watched. Look, FC Dallas does that too. Sometimes they'll literally work on their progressive passing 11 on 0, and it's all about muscle memory of trying to figure out where guys are supposed to be in the zone or on the field, depending on what sport you're talking about. But everybody looks great when there's 0 defenders, right?
I was going to say that. I try to tell our players too, like the only time this stuff really works out when we're drawing up plays is if the other 4 penalty killers or the other 5 guys, 5 on 5, are here right now and they go to the same spots that we draw them in. And so again, these guys are different. I mean, they see things before it happens, which is the key to be able to see things happen and where you want to go before you even get the puck.
All right, let's talk about the lineup tonight because Tyler Seguin has been confirmed by Pete DeBoer is out for his 2nd game. He will not play, and Pete said he is highly doubtful, doesn't expect him to play this weekend, which is the afternoon game at home against the conference final opponent, Edmonton Oilers, 3:00 at the AAC. So here's what we expect to see from the Dallas Stars, confirmed by Mike Heika at Capital One Arena for the pregame warm-up lines. Same as they did against the Sharks. What did you like? What did you not like from this group on Tuesday night?
There wasn't really much that I didn't like. I like what they were doing there. There was a couple guys that got moved around here and there, but for the most part, I think the Robertson, Hintz, Johnson line is going to be really good if they stay together. And I think it's a little different for Wyatt. He plays in the middle, he plays on the wing. A couple guys he doesn't play a ton with all the time when he's trying to get other lines going. So the chemistry of that line and the speed of that line, if they stayed together, we'll see what happens when Tyler comes back. But I think that can be a dynamic line if they want to keep it that way. But I would assume, they may want to get him back in the middle of the ice.
I completely agree. I like the fact that Duchesne was outstanding. Remember last year when Seguin got moved up to fill in for the injured Rope Hintz, Duchesne Marchment didn't play as well. Now, I talked to Duchesne the other day, and he wasn't happy with his last 15 or 20 games of the regular season and a large part of his playoff production. He's extremely hard on himself. There were some details he shared with me. He didn't want to go public. Obviously, I'll respect that. But just knowing how much he holds himself to a higher standard, I said last year a lot, boy, without Seguin, Duchesne, and Marchment together, they're not really clicking. The fact that they did without Seguin is a really good thing. I still think they'll be better with Tyler in the lineup, but the fact that they can produce, as they should, with Dodonov, who's a great player, that was a really encouraging sign for me.
Well, they truly are the sum of their parts, and it is different when one of those 3 is out of the lineup or off that line. It will be interesting, though, as we talked about, about Bourke. What happens if Wyatt plays in the middle, and then you've got Duchesne in the middle? Can Rupe Can Rupe play on a wing?
We haven't really seen him do that.
No, I've seen him
and
play
we
a
haven't
few
really
shifts here and
seen
there.
Bourke do it
And
yet
I don't
either.
know why you would do that, but I'm just wondering, can you play Bourke down on the fourth line?
I mean, I think the Stars want him to be playing in a way that he's in the top 9.
And he should be playing,
But-
no disrespect to the other 2 guys that are on that fourth line,
mean-
but he needs to be playing with guys that can translate what he does into
I agree.
goals.
If Maverick Bourke is playing on the fourth line, it means he's probably not playing very well and has been demoted. Or somebody in that bottom 3, the Steele, Beck, or Blackwell on the right, is playing so well they go, well, we got to reward him.
Yep.
That would be a surprise. That would definitely be something we talk about on the show for a while.
Well, again, I think it's a good problem for the coaching staff.
It is. So look at the D pairings, same as we saw on Tuesday. And then the goaltenders. Casey DeSmith is starting his second game after the shutout win over the Seattle Kraken on Sunday. And Luddy, you said earlier you really liked that Ottinger wasn't playing tonight after all the contract news. What are you looking for from Casey DeSmith, a guy who has played the Caps a few times? You know, he came up through Pittsburgh, and in his career, he has played the Washington Capitals 7 times, 4-2-1 record, 915 save percentage. I know that different team and different circumstances, but a guy that may be comfortable playing against the Caps a little bit.
Only thing I can think of in the game that he played, and there goes my mic again.
You like to elbow
Thank
it a
you.
little bit. You're welcome.
The only thing that I can think of is his rebound control. I thought there was a few of those that kind of left laying around, and but otherwise he was. Again, he was perfect. The other last thing that he'll probably continue to work on is working in tandem with whatever defenseman's got the puck. I mean, there's always that. Where do you leave it? Do you leave it on the wall? Do you leave it at the net? Do you leave it behind? Do you like to move it? And that's going to be a learning process as they move along.
John, throw that card back up one more time on the D pairings. What'd you think of Harley and Heiskanen? Did you notice anything different from either of those guys? Because remember, they were on the left side of separate pairings for the first couple of games before the Dumba injury.
Only thing I notice is Harley kind of wants to jump up more. I don't know if that has to do with anything playing with Miro, but he wants to lead the rush. And there's times he's still young and he's going to learn when and where. There's still times that when he does jump into the rush, I'm not sure it's the right time all the time. And because you got to be careful when you play with a guy like Miro, because he could be right next to you. Next thing you know, you got some problems going back the other way. But I mean, we've liked them as a pair. They ended up being the top pair last year. But again, I think that Miro is definitely going to be on the left side better. If he can be any better than playing on the offside. And I think he's happy wherever he goes. But I think to solidify everything, and hopefully Dumba comes back, because the time that we've seen him there, he's been able to hang up there with him.
All right, let's take a look at the visitor, or not the visitors, the opponent, the home team tonight, the Washington Capitals. And you can't go anywhere with Washington for the last 15, 20 years without seeing Alex Ovechkin on that right wing. He is in a group right now that lost some players. Couple of trade deadline acquisitions. They actually added a couple. Andrew Mangiapane on that third line was a guy from the Calgary Flames that I've always liked. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Stankoven in the style he plays, although not quite the same stature. He's smaller, but I don't think he has that sort of tank-like quality that Stankoven has. And then they re-signed a guy they had drafted 10 years ago in the first round, in Jacob Vrana, for the minimum. What do you think about this group? And we talked about this a lot in one of our segments where we were talking about distractions of the pursuit of Wayne Gretzky's record. Ovechkin hasn't scored a goal yet this year. He did have a big assist game against the Golden Knights on Tuesday. That was their first win. And he actually tallied his 700th career NHL assists in that game. By the way, as he's chasing Wayne Gretzky's goals record, guess what? Wayne has 1,963 regular season NHL assists. That means that he is leading Ovechkin in assists by 1,263.
There's one Ovi's not getting close to.
Right?
Well, and that's not Ovechkin really. He's a shooter.
No.
Right? And that it's funny because that assist, everybody pointed at Ovechkin that was on the ice because it was a nice play. He kind of pulled the puck around, real nice pass from the goal. I do talk about distractions, and I do think that this year and next year or whatever it takes is the focus will be on him, getting to Gretzky's goal record. So, but after that lineup, I think they're going to have a struggling type of year.
John, show that card again, if you would, please. Look at the second line center. Now, first line center is
$80 million there.
Dylan Strome, I think, is a good player, although last year when the Caps came to Dallas, there were a couple times where Strome jumped in front of Ovechkin and took the puck. When I looked at a couple of guys and said, boy, 3-4 years ago, he would never even dream of jumping Ovi. But Pierre-Luc Dubois, second-line center, acquired in a trade from the LA Kings in exchange for Darcy Kemper, who, by the way, won a Stanley Cup with the Avalanche before moving on to Washington. And Dubois is now on his fourth team. Columbus, Winnipeg, LA, and now here. And he is carrying around a lot of baggage. You talk about distractions. He has not lived up to the very high expectations when he first joined the NHL.
He skates sometimes like he's carrying that baggage on his shoulders because there's not, for the contract that he signed and the way that he plays the game sometimes, I'm surprised that there was another team that wanted to take that contract over. So, and again, I don't, when you get past Strome, I'm not sure where they are down the middle as far as being a team that's going to be playoff bound. And, Wilson is Wilson. He'll be a tough guy. And, like you said about Verana, comes back. He's got some speed, but Mangiapane's a good player. 20-goal scorer, maybe.
I like him. Yeah. I always liked him. Again, depending on where he is. If you're asking him to be one of your first-line guys, maybe not. But if he's in your middle six, it's kind of the thing that I'm all right with. Brian McClellan is now the president of hockey operations for the Capitals. Chris Patrick is the GM and senior VP for the Caps. So, we talk about Dubois. Is that doesn't it feel like each team's front office or head coach all has that little bit of ego that says, well, you guys weren't doing it right. We can fix this player.
Good luck. He hasn't proven it yet. Nobody's proven it. So I don't know why they took him. We'll find out. Let's
go to the Caps D and goalies tonight as Charlie Lindgren will get the start. He is from the same hometown as Jake Oettinger, but we won't get the all Minnesota goalie tandem. But I am really interested to see Jakob Chychrun playing alongside John Carlson. Chychrun, at one point, people were talking about being maybe the best defenseman in the league or one of them up there. Arizona, then Ottawa, now here. And it kind of feels like he's searching for or trying to refine his spot, so to speak.
And he's playing with a good partner in Carlson. I think that can be a real good pair. I don't know if they can play over 30 minutes, though. That's a problem.
And they're missing Matt Waugh, who's expected to miss his second straight game due to a lower body injury. So he's out of the lineup. And as you can see, that is Logan Thompson as the backup goalie tonight. Thompson was acquired for 2 third-round draft picks at the NHL entry draft this year from Vegas. And then, of course, Vegas, wheeling deals. I thought, remember, he was the starter at the beginning of the series against the Stars in the first round, and he was really good. Yeah. But they switched. They went back to...
They found the right guy to play.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the look at the two teams. The Stars were a really good road team last year, and guess what? They have beaten the Capitals 5 straight, but it goes back a lot longer than that. Their record since the start of the 09-10 season, 23 games, 18-3-2 head-to-head against the Washington Capitals. They have had their number over a decade and a half.
It means something. Players know that. The other opponent knows that. I think Washington's rested, though. They've only played 2 games, right?
That's only 2 so far.
And at home, they might give them a bit of a push tonight. Stars playing a lot of games.
See, I always wonder about that. They played their first 2 games at home. This will be their third, Capitals. They didn't play until Saturday. So while Dallas had a game Thursday and then Sunday with Saturday in between, and other teams played somewhere between Tuesday, Wednesday, a couple of games in, they had a whole extra week of practice. Is that kind of wears on a player because you can only practice so long before you start to go a little crazy.
Yeah, but you know what? I think the coaches and the players don't mind it either early in the season like this because, again, for your lines and line mates and special teams especially, so see where it goes.
So the Caps, Tom Wilson has goals in both games for Washington. Keep an eye on him, and we'll see if the Stars can figure out a way to get to 5-0 on the season, something they've only done 3 other times to start a year in franchise history. So we'll be back for our full post-game show right at the conclusion, about 10 minutes or so at the end of tonight's game. Until then, we're going to tune into Victory Plus. For Craig Ludwig, I'm Owen Newkirk, and for our producer, the traitor that he is, John Anderson, we'll see you after the game.
We all silly like the mayor.